Welcome to RIAS Voices. Today I'm delighted to introduce to you Andy Summers, who is a new board member at RIS, and he's also been involved recently in the Archie Fringe. Hi, Andy.
Good morning. How you doing?
Not bad. Andy's an architect, he's an educator, and he's also curator of a public programme. And I think it might be a good seg into the Archie Fringe, which is just finished. Has that been pretty successful, do you think, Andy? I certainly do.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, it's our seventh edition of the festival actually, and we had about 90 projects all across Scotland and some further afield, exploring reciprocity, architectures of exchange, which was the provocation for this year. So this is the first time we've had multi-year funding for the Architecture Fringe because we applied to Creative Scotland to join the National Cultural Portfolio and we got awarded some funding back in late January. So that's the first time architecture has been as part of the National Cultural Portfolio from the Scottish Government. So that enabled us to do a few more things that we haven't normally done. But obviously, we had a lot to do within the 5 months of just getting the funding in January. But we had two main venues for the first time. We were in the Lighthouse in 2019, but this time we had the Brigate in Glasgow, and we had the George Brown and Sons Warehouse in Leith as well, two sort of anchors for the festival. So yeah, no, it was a really, really great 2.5 weeks, 3 weekends, and yeah, it was super response to the open program, and the core program was well supported as well. So we had a really great time.
Huge amount of work, but the program just was great. It was so diverse. It was fantastic. So thank you very much because it's all architecture, all getting the public in also is fantastic.
Yeah, it's important. But thank you for joining us as well. So
No, a pleasure, absolute pleasure. So I'm going to go into the more standard questions if that's okay. And the first of these is, why did you become an architect?
okay, so as my mum tells me, when I was five, at least from that age, I would basically ask her about what particular building types were. What type of house is that? Semi-detached. What type of building is that? It's a police station, whatever. And I don't know why, but I was just always very interested in the environment. And I think then projecting forward and kind of reflecting on that, I think I just found. I mean, I just feel I've been really lucky to find something that combines, aesthetics, design, materials, people, place, history, and architecture, I think, is just very rewarding for me. And I feel very, very lucky that I've been able to find this kind of discipline, this profession to exist within, and it's ever nourishing. But yeah, it's been like a sort of wee weirdo, basically, from 5 years old. It's been something that I've been very, very responsive to, and yeah, I feel very fortunate to have found it.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's the idea that it's so wide and it touches everything, and everything it touches is important.
Mm.
I just, totally get that. So we're really kind of segging into the why do you think your work or architecture matters? Maybe you would want to explain a wee bit more in that one.
Yeah, well, I think we all live within it basically. I'm in my flat in Glasgow right now. The streets outside, which is tenemental structure, there's a grid in Govan Hill. It goes on into the wider Glasgow area. I mean, everybody in the planet basically lives within architecture because the whole point is shelter, of course. We can't really survive outside. So we need to construct habitats that protect us from the elements, basically. And so, architecture itself has a profound effect on people's lived experience and the quality of their life, basically. It can enhance people's daily lived experience, or it can actually really sort of have a detrimental effect upon it, depending how bad the design is. So I think what's great about architecture is that everybody has an opinion about it in a good way, because even if they think they don't aren't qualified to have some opinion, of course they have an opinion about how they then curate their surroundings around them if they can. So I think it's a really great discipline in relation to having so much immediate meaning for everybody. And that's why it's important, because basically it affects everybody's lives.
Yeah. And is there something in particular that you've done that you're particularly proud of in that context of people's lives?
I mean, I think collaborating with people and trying to have some sort of common purpose towards a common good is kind of the main thing that I'm interested in. But I guess if you're asking me professionally, within the sector that we coexist within, I think, the architecture fringe, for example, is that, kind of imagining that with others from a kind of starting point from scratch, basically over 10 years ago, and then developing that into an organization that tries to make some progress on a lot of aspects in the sector in Scotland as well, and tries to improve representation, tries to be aware of what's going on socially, politically. But we've basically kind of grown that into representing the country at Venice in 2023, and now kind of part of the national cultural portfolio, which is important for architecture to be there in relation to how the Scottish government kind of understands culture. So I think professionally, that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, just in terms of growing that, but also, it's the best excuse to speak to anybody near the Architecture Fringe, and we can commission interesting projects and support kind of emerging practitioners and stuff. So I think, yeah, very, very proud of that impact.
Absolutely, you should be because, as you say, it's just grown and grown in its strength and its reach. It's fantastic. So, a sort of lighter question. Have you a particular favorite place or a town or a building or all three?
So this is my least favorite question ever.
Oh, really?
Oh God, it's so hard. So what I've, because obviously you sent me the questions in advance, which is very kind. So what I've kind of thought about this basically is I'm not going to answer that with a building or place necessarily, because to be honest with you, I've experienced, many wonderful things, but I don't really have a favorite because I still feel I'm looking for that. But what I always return to environmentally is the Western Sky. And I just feel the Western Sky is kind of like a real kind of like spirit place for me. And, I was even out with a friend last night on Victoria Road, just having a drink on the street and stuff. And we're just watching the Western Sky. And I just find it very grounding. And I think is a good reminder for us in relation to remembering that we're part of a kind of wider planetary system. It's not all about humans. And we're kind of diminutive in scale at a planetary scale individually, but obviously collectively we're having far too heavy an impact on the planet that is subsisting us. So I just find the Western Sky is kind of my kind of favorite kind of comfort place at the moment. But yeah.
And it's always there and it's always in, no matter where you are. I'm conscious that it was Alfred Hitchcock, I think, that said that the sunset at Zadar was the best in the world. And I was thinking, well, really? And
Quite a
it's
few places,
everywhere. It's on the west coast of Scotland. It's
but
fantastic.
it changes every night, of course, which is just spectacular.
Yeah, good answer.
Thank you.
And moving on to something more serious, well, everything's serious really, and that's serious, your point. The biggest challenge for the profession, in your opinion, at this moment?
Yeah, I think I kind of tried to distill that down to relevancy, to be honest. And trying to make sure that architecture and architects aren't continue to be marginalized within the kind of construction and procurement and design process, because I think our position is always feels a bit tenuous, to be frank. And I think trying to make sure that we are seen as more relevant, not only to the wider public, but to the government as well. And I've got some thoughts about how that might happen, but I think that's probably our biggest is challenge is to remain relevant, and that kind of also includes kind of maybe expanding where our training takes us basically. So obviously currently the whole educational system is designed for a Part 3 qualified architect backwards. And I just left the Glasgow School of Art just a couple of months ago, and I used to co-run the fourth year there and like sort of look out to the student cohort and kind of remind them that not everyone in the room wants to be a Part 3 architect. That's also totally fine. And for them to realize that our time here and their experience is authentic and valid, and to take this experience into different places as an architect, to local government or to community organization, and to try and dwell less on this defined protected title, which I don't really put much value on, to be frank, and trying to see an architect and our training, which is highly valuable and really interesting, to make sure it actually goes into a wider range of places, so its relevancy and immediacy improves, I think.
Yeah. And I think I mean, that's where RIS comes in as an organization that's got to be relevant, but also an organization that's relevant in the context that you set.
Mhm.
And I think RIS Live coming up in November is where we're going to try and explore that width of architectural potential as well
Yeah,
in some of the speakers that are going to be there.
yeah.
Because there's no doubt everything has changed, yet the profession is somewhat grounded in where it was in the 50s or, prior.
Yeah, sadly so. And we've got great things to offer.
Mhm.
Let's go wider bandwidth.
Yeah. Is there any particular advice you would give to your 5-year-old self?
Well,
No,
maybe
no, you're
not my 5-year-old self, but my 18-year-old self, in relation to it's about starting an architecture, isn't it? This question.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So basically, it's to read quicker. Obviously, I can read, but I didn't really read for pleasure or kind of design advancement till about third year at uni, to be honest. I'd read the text that we had to do for essays and things, but just when I was in the year out living in Melbourne, I really kind of got into fiction and caught up a lot on the architectural theory that I really should have read in first and second year. And I was kind of sort of stuck in aesthetic design circles because I wasn't nourishing my mind in relation to the potentials for the designs that I was working on. So I say to the students, to try and just make sure you authentically read, because even it's more pressure now than it was back then in terms of doom scrolling on a screen. You're not really taking in anything to depth. It's a lot of surface stuff. And, to use the library, actually open books, because the surprise of seeing something on a shelf you can't replicate on the internet, basically. And even for, composition and how you outlay a sheet and the visual hierarchy of information, books and magazines are professionally designed. So that's kind of what the advice I give. But then there's also iteration as well in the design process, and to just really authentically commit to iteration, to move through different things, because you never land on the best result the first time, do you? So you got to keep pushing.
That's the answer of an educator there. Definitely.
Yeah.
Um, so, do you think having the RIS is worthwhile? I mean, it's a very core question for us.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was part of a new chapter, and the care taken in recognizing that, the question is a professional body still relevant in the 21st century? And obviously, my answer to that was yes, because it's easier to dismantle structures than it is to rebuild them. So we have a professional body in this part of the world. And it's like, well, what can we do with that? And I think what the RAS, the potential is it for, is obviously it has to be about the members, because it's a membership organization, basically. And, the members run businesses. And I think what the professional body has to do is enable the collective group of people who are the membership to have the organization then take risks on their behalf, to lobby for the government on their behalf, to improve the the sort of frameworks of architecture, but also then our relationship with government and people as well. Because if you're running a business, which is, what a practice is, you're incredibly busy just making sure that you survive. And the whole point of collectively coming together for a professional membership body, I think, is then for the institution, the incorporation in this instance, to then advance the profession and take risks and ruffle feathers, because individual practices can't necessarily do that. And that's the whole point, I think. So
Yeah. And you'll know that just last week or so we did ruffle some feathers.
yes,
Tamsin
yeah,
went to COSLA basically and said, look, this isn't what your local authorities should be doing in relation to procurement.
yeah.
It's massive, and we've got a meeting with Scottish Government and others coming out of that. But there's more to do, is obviously, and in that regard, is there things that you think RIS should be doing more of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great example, just the past couple of weeks. And I think, lobbying the government is important, because again, it goes back to relevancy that we're chatting to before. And as I say, taking risks and trying to actually have ethical positions on a lot of things that are going on in society that affects architecture. Um, but then, trying to obviously have a human side to that. It's not all about business, it's the culture of architecture, of course, and how architects engage with society and the kind of wider support of a democratic society, basically. So I think, yeah, just trying to be more present, speak up more, and be in with government circles in relation to being seen as a kind of active presence for the government to engage with and respond to.
And do you see any bridge with education being needed there?
You mean between the incorporation and educators?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, obviously, the education committee is doing a great job. But I think, the future of the membership is in the architecture schools. Because, I mean, there's
Mm.
very few people joining the RIAS who aren't architecture students, to be frank,
Yeah.
that's the reality. And, trying to make sure that the incorporation is representative, but also seen to be engaged on contemporary topics that are important to younger people, because they're not always the same things as older members. There's obviously societal changes and drifts. And I think, trying to ensure that the incorporation is seen as a place of relevancy for the architecture students is important in terms of what's going on actually outside the architecture schools.
Yeah. I think, as you say, through the Education Committee, we've got stronger links through the work that Maya and Joe are doing on Careers Studio, etc. So, and you mentioned you've got other ideas. Hopefully, you're going to be bringing them to the board. And I know that you're off to the States for work, basically, and but you're still going to be involved, obviously, in the board because we can do that these days.
That's
Um,
right.
I just look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, it's
and thank
incredible.
you very much indeed.
No worries. Thanks, Karen.
Cheers.